The Door Opens at Night by Karen Cave. We were sitting in the lounge watching a Netflix thriller late at night, myself and my boyfriend Jeff, when the living room door seemed to creak open slightly. The door was out of sight, but we both heard it clearly. We both jolted, following that slight delay you always get after a sudden shock, as if your brain needs a second to process what has just happened. "What the hell?" I said out loud, and my heart was thumping. My boyfriend stood up and craned to listen for further sounds. I nudged him. "Go see what it is." I felt annoyed that he wasn't rushing to protect me, to protect our baby who was asleep upstairs, to protect our home. I hated his chicken ways, always passive, having to be pushed. Secretly, I hated that I was always the first one to jump to protection mode. We'd been together for a few years now. Even having a baby was something that he had never really thought about, but had been happy to go along with my desire to start a family. I prodded him again. "Go see what it is! Protect your domain!" I did a mock muscle pose. I was getting annoyed. I wanted this film finished. I wanted us to be left alone. Jeff shuffled off into the other room, and I heard him open the front door wide. Felt the cold air rush through as I imagined him craning his neck out into the dark street. I shivered and pulled the blanket closer around me. I hated these bitter winter nights. After a moment, the door was closed and locked. I heard the various key rings rattle and jangle as the key was turned. Then, silence. I called out, "Was anyone out there? I'm sure I locked the door when we came back from shopping." He padded in slowly. His big frame slumped beside me on the couch. I watched his face from the side. His broad nose, his full lips. He looked baffled. He had that deep crease in his brow that he gets when he can't get his laptop to work or when I ask him to change a nappy. I wanted to finish this film and I felt impatient. "Jeff, what's up?" He shook his head just slightly, frowning. It wasn't like him to be so subtle. "The door was locked," he said. Then he looked at me. I frowned too, but it still swung open. He nodded. "Is that even possible?" He shrugged slightly and went to say something else, but hesitated. I urged him on. He told me, "It felt like something touched me, right here." He touched the top of his head lightly with a finger. It was really cold, but I looked up and around. There wasn't anything. We just looked at each other. Nothing more to say. Jeff never lied, and I didn't not believe him. I literally had no words. His lack of noise was disquieting. Usually he would have been raving or ranting somewhat. This was the strangest thing that had ever happened to us. In time, we returned to our film, sure that this was one of those weird mysteries of life that would never happen again and would never be figured out. Just an oddity to be filed away under, "Oh well, that was a bit weird." An hour later, the film was reaching its terrifying climax, and we were both deeply invested, me snuggled up to Jeff slightly, blanket pulled up over my chin, his broad arm around my shoulders as his other hand scurried around for the last remnants of popcorn in the bowl, which was sitting on my lap. We both heard it again. That creak of the door during a silent moment during the film, so unexpected but unmistakable. It swung all the way open from the sounds of it. We both leapt up, and I paused the film with shaking hands as he grabbed a heavy bar weight from the floor and rushed out, weapon in hand. He was finally taking control. After a moment, I followed, tentatively, but also I was getting annoyed that our film and our night kept getting interrupted. I stood there, confused. The front door stood wide open, black night infiltrating our cosy world. I tiptoed over to the step, but I couldn't see Jeff. I looked left to the corner of the street. Nothing. Glancing right down the row of terraced houses, I couldn't see or even sense where he had gone. He was in his socks and t-shirt, so he couldn't have gone far. It was freezing out. "Jeff!" I hissed, wincing at the cold, wrapping my arms around myself. I took a few steps out onto the icy pavement and, glancing forwards to the entrance of the cul-de-sac that our house faced, I saw him. He was stood, hunched, in the dark, with his back to me. He had his right arm raised up high, with the weight in his hand. "Jeff, are you all right?" I felt alarmed suddenly. Jeff didn't move, didn't turn his head to acknowledge my voice. I felt a chill run down my back that didn't feel entirely like the cold. He raised the 8-kilogram bar slightly higher. "Jeff!" He turned around then, facing me. His face was slack and his eyes were too dark. They weren't his usual colour. Without warning, he brought the bar down as hard as he could onto the top of his head. I screamed and ran towards him, but he smashed it down again and again before falling to the ground. Blood was running from his smashed scalp, and I was covered in blood as I cradled him on the ground, sobbing. I would never forget that crack and that squelching sound. I wailed for help. I rocked. I couldn't get his eyes to open. Lights began to turn on in nearby houses, and a concerned neighbour popped her head out and, seeing the sight of us, rushed back inside to call 999. The paramedics found me rocking and holding Jeff, and they told me after his and my family had been notified and he was being looked after in hospital in a critical condition with a fractured skull, that I wouldn't stop mumbling. We were only watching a film. What was out there? What opened the door? It was only a film. What was out there? He ate all the popcorn. What was out there? What was out there? Jeff died in hospital a few days later. They couldn't save him. I couldn't explain what had happened or why.